someone needs to be killed, you kill him.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Mask of the Slasher. We are on episode 23. Woot woot. And, yeah, I know, it's just like a little one. It's like a car alarm, like a little...
Just a little one for numbers that have no real significance.
Yes. Just whoop, whoop. It's one of those. Yeah, anyway. We decided to do a little special something.
Woot woot.
For one of our favorite directors, Mr. Rob Zombie. Yeah. We are actually fans of Rob Zombie's music. As you can see, we have been listening to him since day one. Josh has been listening to him since he was in White Zombie.
Yeah.
So back in the 90s.
Yeah.
We'll just go back that far.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And I'd like to point out that just what an interesting trajectory Rob Zombie has had as far as his career, because White Zombie actually started off as kind of like a scuzzy noise rock band that played with like Swans and Sonic Youth and bands like that in that New York scene. Mm-hmm. And then they become this huge MTV band, and now he's this huge solo artist and has a film career as well. Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. Cinderella
story.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and in a good way. I mean, the man's a vegan. They're all for animal rights. Him and his wife Sherry Moon. It's just good folks.
It seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah, good peeps.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about House of a Thousand Corpses, which was Rob Zombie's directorial debut. This movie came out on April 11th, 2003 with a small little itty-bitty budget of $7 million.
Yes.
And it originally started with Universal Studios. He had some issues with them. It got moved to Lionsgate. And I thought this was kind of funny, and I had heard the story a couple times where while they were shooting the movie, the house that they used in it was actually the house from the best little horror house in Texas. Oh. Yeah. And you see it on the tram tour when you go. And they, normally if you go on the tram tour, I can't talk. Normally when you go on the tram tour at Universal Studios, they will avoid certain paths if they're recording things. They wouldn't do that for him. Right. Which is stupid.
Yeah.
So, and between that and apparently the Jaws ride ruined a lot of takes, things like that. So I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting because I understand that he wasn't a proven commodity as far as films were concerned, but he was still like, a million selling musician. Yeah. You had to think, let's give this guy, a little bit of a chance.
Well, why would they even sign the contract and fund it in any way and then not respect anything? And I would imagine that it was a pretty big deal to him at the time to be accepted by Universal because he's such a huge Universal monster fan.
Right.
So it just kind of, I don't know, it was kind of garbage that they did that. And but they did a really good job of making that house ugly because I have seen it since, and it's definitely been cleaned up since that. Right. But he even said that their craft services was over at the Psycho lot. Oh. I thought that was pretty funny. So anyway, this movie, when I first saw it in the weirdest movie theater ever. It was this little dinky theater in Reno, Nevada. Reno. We're big fans of Reno.
We love Reno.
Yeah, this is pre-Josh that I went and saw this in their little tiny theater, which is now at the place is now the Grand Sierra Resort. I can't remember what it was back then, but it is a itty bitty teeny weeny little theater.
Yeah.
It's really weird. But anyway, went and saw it with some friends, and like I said, I was already a fan of Rob Zombie, but when I saw this movie, I will actually admit that I did not like it at first.
Really?
Yeah, and I think what it was, I've been thinking about this last couple of days since we talked about doing this video. Mm-hmm. It had to do with the fact that a lot of the cinematography reminded me of his concerts. Mm. Like the stuff that's being shown on the screen behind him all the time.
Right.
and in his videos and all that. And I mean, I guess you should expect that to an extent.
Right.
But I was kind of hoping for something a little bit different. Also, it was very, the coloring in it is incredibly bright and very comic book-like.
Yes.
And that kind of put me off a little bit too, because it just, I don't know, this was back when I was just a little one with learning all the fun horror that's out there.
Right.
But it's still, I just anticipated something different than what I got.
Okay. See, I was expecting him to make something that looked like his videos and like his, like the White Zombie artwork and stuff like that. And that's what you got. And then also I think, there's probably like an EC Comics influence, because if you look at those old horror comics, yes, they're quite gruesome, but they're also quite colorful. So I'm sure that's probably where that came from as well.
It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. But I watched it again later on, and I had a different perspective of it. Maybe it's just because that weird little tiny theater was kind of rapey and strange. It just didn't really, I don't know, it just didn't really do it for me at the time.
Right.
But yes, now it's one of my top favorite movies.
Yeah.
And I have seen it 1,000 times at this point. It's one of those that if it's on, I'm watching it.
Right.
And sometimes it's not on and I'm gonna watch it. So
yeah.
For this video, I always go back and watch the movies and take notes and, get more detailed with it. I'm getting jiggy with it. And I decided this time to rewatch it with the director's commentary on, which I never do.
Yeah.
Because it irritates me, actually. But this was actually really comical, and he's just a witty, fun guy.
Right.
So all his comments were hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's kind of dry a little bit sometimes,
exactly.
which I appreciate. Yeah, for me too, it was one of the few that I've ever watched with director's commentary, just strictly because of who it was. And yeah, it was definitely entertaining. Of course, it was years and years ago that I sat and did this, but yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely worth watching.
This movie is supposed to take place in 1978. And that was the other thing I had a problem with, was that despite their clothing, I really felt like that was the only thing, their clothing and the car, that really put it back to that time frame.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, especially when you compare it to like what we just watched of Late Night with the Devil, that feels that feels super duper 70s to me, whereas this feels like it could be the 70s, or it could be just, current, a current time frame, but in a rundown area. You know what I mean?
And like hipsters.
Yeah.
In a car.
Exactly.
Yeah, like they just went to Portland, got some coffee.
Yeah.
And they probably were like, rolling up their pants a little bit, because their bicycle that they ride, and
Yeah, I think it was, probably going for kind of a Texas Chainsaw vibe, that type of thing. But for me, it's not quite there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It stands on its own, absolutely. You can't really, it's hard to compare it to another movie, which is what made it so great, really. I think that this movie, a lot of people were on the fence about it. With this tiny little budget, he still managed to walk away at the box office with $16.8 million. Oh. That's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
For just a one-timer, it's kind of cool to actually be successful with it.
Yeah.
I also was really on the fence in the beginning with Sherry Moon Zombie. Because I'm like, well, that's convenient.
Yeah.
Nepotism. Exactly. And for those of you who don't know, Sherry Moon Zombie is obviously Rob Zombie's wife. They knew each other from back when he was in White Zombie. She would go on tours with him. And then when he went solo, she was brought on to do the costume design and choreograph and dance in his shows. And back then, I do remember the girls in the cages, the go-go dancers. And it could have been her at that time, or she could have been like, nah, I'm hanging out backstage. She put some other hose up there. I don't know.
Exactly.
But, and she she actually did start school in voiceovers, like cartoon voiceover kind of stuff, as well as broadcasting.
Okay.
So she did have some, just a pinch, yeah, a little bit, and that's why you always hear her voice in like, you know, parts of the CD, you know, in his albums. You'll hear in her laugh. But I was still on the fence about her being in the movie because I'm like, oh, who's she?
Right.
You know, and how is this gonna pan out and whatever? And a lot of people still don't like her.
Right.
No matter what she's been in, because she's only been in Rob Zombie movies except for the Toolbox Murders that we started to watch, which was garbage.
Oh yeah, it was terrible.
It was hot garbage. And she's been in like CSI Miami or one of those.
Random. Oh, she was in. Wasn't she in like briefly a cameo in Californication?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the other one.
Yeah.
She was a nurse or something like that. So, but she actually did fairly well in this. Yeah. And I think it was because it was so cartoonish and
over
whatever.
The top,
yeah, and so she could fit in with that personality. And as the years went on, she has grown definitely as an actress.
Yeah.
So, but I think she did a great job in this. I honestly think everybody who was in it did an amazing job. Yeah. And watching it back, you know, the other day with his commentary and everything, I was just like, you know, it just gives you a new perspective of things and a new appreciation of what these actors go through. Right. And just where it all started. Right.
I thought she did a fine job in it. Of course, I think Sid Haig is the best performance in the whole movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he just steals the whole thing, in my opinion. He's just so fantastic in it. Just the way he delivers dialogue and just kind of his attitude, you know, and everything is just perfect. Just perfect.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and he's just so showy.
Yeah,
he's so flashy and everything. And I thought it was funny, the shirts that he wears were actually vintage shirts that they found.
Oh, really?
They didn't make those.
Gosh, that's crazy.
And I can't even remember, like one of them was like, if I wanted you up my ass, I would fart or so. I don't know, something like that. And I was like, God damn, that's some funny shit right there. So he did an amazing job. Of course, Bill Moseley did. Yeah. But he was such a small part in this.
Yeah.
Compared to what later happened.
Yeah. And for the longest time, I didn't know Bill Moseley's name. I just always referred to him as Chop Top.
Oh yeah, it's just Chop Top.
I had no idea what his name was. I just always knew him as Chop Top from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2.
Yes. So. And for the record, both Bill Moseley and Sid Haig, R.I.P. buddy.
Yes.
Both of them are incredibly nice people. You know, most people have seen this movie that are into horror. Yeah. If you haven't, definitely check it out. You don't have to have an appreciation for Rob Zombie's music in any way. No. There's only one Rob Zombie song in the whole thing.
Yeah. It does help, though, because, like I said, I feel like, you know, being a fan, I liked all his videos and his artwork and all that kind of stuff. And then going into the movie, that's exactly what I got. You know what I mean? So it was just like being kind of sucked into zombie world with this one especially. So I think you don't have to be a fan, but I think it helps.
Well, it helps understand why he has such appreciation of horror in general. Right. That is, I mean, that's what his music is based off of, everything. So it's not a surprise by any means. We would like to know what you guys thought of this movie. A lot of people have strong opinions about Rob Zombie's movies. More so Halloween, but this being the first one, and when we remember it coming out and it not having this great reception from anybody, I'm even surprised they showed it in Iowa, by the way.
Oh, I know. I saw it with my mom, so shout out to my mom for being the coolest mom in the multiverse, going to see this movie with me.
Yes, and she probably loved it.
I think she was kind of on the fence about it, actually, if I recall.
Really?
Mom, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Hopefully you'll watch this one.
Is it because of the necrophilia?
I don't know. I don't
Boobies?
think... I don't think that stuff bothers her.
Oh, okay.
You know, but like I said, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, and it also had that freak show atmosphere,
right?
Which I thought was very popular back then.
Yeah, and I think, I often wonder if the reason it wasn't as well received is because none of the protagonists are particularly likable.
Yeah.
Like none of the kids that are or the hipsters or whatever they're not none of them are very likable, so you're totally fine with it when they get killed.
Well, yeah, and he talks about that in his commentary, the main girl, it's so bitchy and annoying.
Yeah.
And he's like, people just want her to die. He's saying these things. He's like, she's just bitching and complaining, and it was like, yes, that's how we all felt.
Yeah.
And he does a really good job in his movies switching the roles around to where you do feel for the bad folk.
Right.
And that's definitely the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this too. I mean, I mean, the necrophilia, that definitely is like, that's a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's still pretty comical because it's all cheerleaders. And
yeah.
I don't know. I just think that's funny because I'm like, how did you get a whole busload of cheerleaders over here? But yeah, I can understand some people not really appreciating certain parts of that.
Right, for sure.
Or if you don't really, he's not overly gory.
No, it's not overly gory. It's not. And again, I think that's that Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe, is a lot of the violence is implied.
Yes. And he talks about that too, that he would rather do that than show you everything because the expressions on the actor's faces is far more important than the actual, oh my gosh, this is going into somebody's eyeball or whatever it is. Now, with that said, of course, I love the gore.
Right.
So I would have been fine with it either way, but I appreciate what he did because it's, once again, it's that whole thing where don't explain everything, and then you appreciate the topic a lot better and the plot.
Right.
So, anyway, let us know what you think.
Yes, let us know.
And as a surprise for you folks, this is a two-parter.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, shit. So, coming up next, we're going to talk about The Devil's Rejects.
Yes.
These will not be released on the same day, but they will be released, about a week apart from each other?
Yep. We
are going to change the release days of our videos to Fridays.
Yes.
Just because that's what we feel like doing.
Yes.
And because I really feel like people are watching these videos more so on their lunch break when they're taking a dump. Because that's when the numbers start going up. Is that when you guys are watching these videos, when you're taking a dump, like your middays? Because I'd like to know.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
And if you're subscribed, then you'll know when our videos come out. So be sure to like and subscribe.
Yes. And we'd like to thank the people that have subscribed recently. Numbers keep climbing. Of course, we're not anywhere near where we'll ever earn any money off of this. So you know that these are not...
Yes.
This isn't for the money.
No, we're doing it because we love it, folks.
Yes, and we want to entertain you.
Yes.
All right. See you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.